guys, welcome back. Here I'm opening up our Eclipse and selecting the default workspace. So in Eclipse, I'm going to create a brand new class, which we are starting with this part right here, declaring a class. We will come back to all of the elements here, but let us start with creating a class. So under the default package, I right-clicked and adding a new class. For this, I will name it as top to bottom. And here I'm not selecting anything else for now, just giving a name to the class, top to bottom, and finish it. You can see a class top to bottom.java is created, and with the same name, a class is also created. Okay, one thing you need to be aware of is the class name, whatever the Java file name, should be same as the class, the outer class name. So if I want to name it as top to bottom one, either I need to go back. You see the red X symbols here, the little X symbols? That means it is not appropriate or legal to do that. So either I have to change the name of the file to top to bottom one, or just remove this one. So that's a convention we have to follow. The name of the .java and the class file, the class name should be the same. This is the common mistake people will be wondering. They will create some class file and then they will try to give a different name to the class name. So you have to be aware of that. So we have created a class here, and now let us declare some class level variables. Okay, here I'm declaring an integer age equal to 0. I'm initiating with the 0 value for now, and I'm also declaring one more variable, private string name equal to something empty, or you can do null, any one of those. So we have declared a class and we have declared class level variables. They are also called as instance variables because they will be at the class level. Whenever you create an object out of this class, they are available as part of the class instance. So they are also called instance variables. So we have declared a class and class level variables. Now let us create a method. This is where it gets interesting. So I'm going to create a method by name. I should have a goal in my mind what I'm doing. So let us create a method which is a summation of two numbers, or a multiplication of two numbers this time, just for a change. So I want to create a method multiply. This is the method, and curly braces is the syntax for methods. For now, the return type is void. If we haven't discussed about the return types, we will do it shortly. So here the method is an action upon the data. Variables are the data, whereas a method is an action upon, like whether it's a multiplication or addition or whatever we are doing, any kind of action we take on the data will be part of the method. So we have declared a class level variables, and a method. Here I want you to pay attention to the syntax. Syntax can be confusing when you are starting out. So for variables, you will not be using this parenthesis. You will be simply declaring variable and assigning an initial value. Even if you don't assign an initial value, that should not be a complaint from the editor. That is still fine. But if you notice, for the variables, we are not using parentheses, whereas for methods, we use a parenthesis right after the method name. And always a method will have a curly braces followed by that. Okay, so Here we have these variables and a method declared. Now let us see what is a method signature. Okay, so method signature is whatever that goes into these parentheses is the method signature. That means whatever the method takes, the values is the method signature. In our case, we are trying to multiply. So for multiplying, at least let us do with two numbers. So with that in mind, I will accept two numbers as parameters. Pay attention to the keywords. Parameters. One parameter, I'll call it as number 1, and another parameter I will call it as number 2. Okay, so we are accepting two numbers to multiply, and these are called parameters, parameter 1 and parameter 2. The whole combination of parameters is called method signature. Okay, so the whole thing, if you have 2, 3 or 4 or 5, it doesn't matter. The whole thing is called method signature. And now let us talk about method return type. So once the method processes the data it received, it can return the value back to the calling method. So whatever the program or a method or is calling this particular multiply, there's a typo. So whatever it is calling multiply, that can get back the result back. So that is called the return type. If the method is not returning any value, you can simply say void. That means no return type exists. Okay, let us try with no return type exist first, and then we will return a value. Now this particular one, number 12 item here, method variables. Inside the method you can declare variables. You have declared variables at a class level. In the similar way, you can declare method level variables. If you can think of the only one variable I may require here is the product of these two numbers, right? So the product of these two numbers is what I need. So for that I will declare a variable int product equal to 0, and then this part you already know from summation we did. The product will be a multiplication between number 1 and number 2, okay, and a semicolon. Every statement in Java ends with a semicolon. So this asterisk represent multiplication. Hope so far so good. Let us see here. We will try to print out the value right here within the method itself. So I will add syso. You can type in syso and do control space bar in Windows. Then you can use the shortcut to copy the value. You don't have to type in. Product is whatever the value that's been calculated. Okay, so this is where we have created method and did the multiplication and printing out. To really print this out, Java needs a main function. So Java compiler does not care about the methods and classes unless it finds a main function. Main is like where the Java needs to start executing. Without main, you cannot run this particular class. So if I do run as, you will not get an option to run at all in Eclipse also. So what we can do is we can add a main method, which is the entry point into the Java, and here I would call the multiply method. by passing in two values. So let us say I will pass in 2, 3 semicolon and save it. Here you can notice it's complaining about change multiply to static. This is a concept in Java where a static method can only call a static method. So I have to change multiply to a static method. So I can simply click here to change it to static, or I can type it by myself. So I'll just click here, change multiply to static, and once it is changed to static, the red complaint went away. Now let us quickly run this. Run as. You can notice the main Java application appeared again. Click run, and you will get the product which is being printed out from within the method itself. Okay, so here is one thing I would go in a different session is static. It's interview point also. It's an important concept. What is static and why we need static, we will discuss later. Don't get carried away by that. Just focus on class, methods, class level variables, method level variables, and return type. Okay, so we need to cover one more aspect, which is return type. So which is the return type here, right here. So return type, we declare it as void, but I want to change this to int. Okay, so I'm printing in this method here, but what if I want to print or take that value back to the calling method, which is main method? What if I want that value here in this method? Right now I cannot. I don't have access to the product in this method, but for some reason I want that product value to be available in the calling method. Then I need to pass it back that value to the calling method. So main here is the calling method and multiply is the being called method, right? So multiply, we are calling multiply from within main. So main is calling multiply and the product is printed out here in multiply. For my requirement, I want that multiplied whatever the product value available in main. So right now it is not available. If I want to make sure that is available, I have to get it back from multiply. Then instead of saying void, I should say some data type, whatever it is being returned. Since the product of two numbers is also an integer, I will put the data type as integer. So since it is an integer and we are not returning any integer here, that is why it is complaining. Always pay attention to the error message you get in the editor. Okay, so here it is saying this method must return a result of type int, and it is also suggesting add return statement or change return type to void. We don't want to change it to void. We are coming from void to integer right now, so this is not an option. Then I will choose the first one, add return statement. Okay, I will add a return statement and it by default intelligently selected product. That's what we want to send it back. So now we not only printing within the method, but we are also returning the product to the calling function, which is main. So I'm getting the product value back to main, but within the main I'm not catching it, right? So I need to catch it by declaring an int and giving some variable. Not necessarily should be the same, so that is why I'm changing slightly to product value. So here I'm catching that value which is being returned here by using this variable, and I can simply do a sysout, control space, printed from main, just to indicate the difference where it is being printed from. So here I'm trying to say that it is being printed from main. So here if we run this one right now, run as Java application, product is 6, which is being printed here. Printed from main. Printed from main. So the value is again printed from main. You see the return type, how it works. If you declare it a return type, then you need to use a return to send back the product via the return type to the calling function, and the calling function should catch that value so that it can use it as an input for something else. The possibilities are unlimited, but the requirement varies. In some cases you don't have to return something, in some cases you have to return something. In both the cases we have seen an example. Now this is the hardest part. You covered one of the hardest part, dissecting the class. Instance variables, method variables, methods, return types. Very critical aspect of a class, a Java class file is covered here. The other two topics we need to cover are simple, which are package and import. We will see package and import in the next lesson. Thank you.